Stop reaching for your phone. Before you send that message, before you refresh his profile one more time, before you rehearse what you'd say if he walked back through the door tonight, I need you to understand something that almost no one will say out loud. The men who come back don't return because you convince them. They don't come back because of the perfect text, the E, clever caption, or the friend who casually mentions you at brunch. They come back because of something you stopped doing. And once you see what that is, you will never chase another person again in your life. Here's what I want you to know right now, before anything else. The pull you're feeling, that tight, aching, almost panicked need to do something, is the exact energy that's keeping him away. Not because he's cruel, not because you're unworthy, but because there is a psychological principle at work that most women have never been taught. And once you understand it, the entire dynamic flips. So take a breath. Settle in. Because what I'm about to walk you through is the one shift that makes men return. And more importantly, the one shift that makes you never need them to. Let me start with the misunderstanding. The mistake almost every woman makes when she senses a man drifting. You think the answer is more. More attention, more effort, more warmth, more availability. You tell yourself that if you can just be a little easier to love, a little more understanding, a little more there, he'll remember, he'll turn around, he'll see you. So you lean in, you text first, you plan dates, you bend around his schedule, his moods, his excuses. You become the one holding the relationship up, like a ceiling you can't let fall. And here's the painful part. The harder you hold it up, the faster he walks away. Because love doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to presence. And right now, you're not present. You're performing. You're performing a version of yourself you think he wants, and he can feel it. People are not as oblivious as culture pretends they are. They sense effort. They sense anxiety. They sense when someone is trying to earn them. And the moment they feel earned, something inside them goes cold. Not because they don't like you, but because part of what made them choose you in the first place was the feeling that you were a woman, with your own world, and now that world seems to revolve around him. That's not attractive. That's heavy. And people don't return to what feels heavy. So if doing more doesn't work, what does? That's the question we need to answer. And to answer it, you have to understand what's actually happening inside him when he pulls away. When a man steps back from a woman, something very specific begins to happen in the space you leave behind. And I want you to really hear this, because it's going to change the way you see every silence, every unread message, every unanswered call from this day forward. The mind doesn't fill empty space with peace. It fills it with you. Your absence doesn't disappear for him. It becomes a presence of its own. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the principle that unresolved things take up more mental space than resolved ones. Finished chapters close, unfinished ones loop, and a woman who's no longer chasing him, no longer available in the way she used to be, no longer pouring herself into the conversation, becomes an unfinished chapter. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This only happens if you actually let the space exist. If you keep rushing in to fill it, with a text, a call, a casual, just checking in, a strategic Instagram story, you collapse the space. You give his mind somewhere to rest. You complete the sentence for him. And the second you do that, the psychological momentum evaporates. You went from being the thought he couldn't finish to the notification he can ignore. This is why so many women feel like they're trying everything and getting nothing back. It's not that the principle doesn't work. It's that they keep interrupting it. They go silent for 3 days, panic and reach out. They block him, then unblock him to check. They tell themselves they're moving on and then bring him up in every conversation. The psychological shift never has time to take root because the soil keeps getting disturbed. So the question becomes, how do you let the space exist? How do you stop interrupting the very process that brings people back? That brings us to the one psychological shift that changes everything. Here's the truth, stripped down to its essence. The one thing, the only thing, that consistently pulls someone back into your orbit is this. You become the center of your own life again. Not the center of his. Not the center of a strategy to get him. The center of your actual living, breathing life. This is the trick, though I hate that word, because there's nothing manipulative about it. It's not a trick on him. It's a correction for you. You return to yourself, and in doing that, you become the kind of woman that people don't just want to be with. They don't want to live without. Why does this work? Because human beings are wired to value what seems self-sustaining. We're drawn to people whose lives feel whole, whose energy feels settled, whose attention feels earned rather than given. When a woman's world visibly expands beyond the man, two things happen at once. First, she becomes more attractive because she becomes rarer. Her time, her focus, her care become resources that have to be deserved. And second, she becomes emotionally free, which means she's no longer tied to whether he returns. And that second part is the real win, because a woman who doesn't need him back is exactly the woman men come back to. Now, let me break this down into what it actually looks like, because be the center of your own life can sound like a slogan if I leave it there. It's not a slogan. It's a series of specific, concrete choices you make every day. 5 of them, to be exact, and each one matters. The first place he lives rent-free is inside your head. Before you can change any outer behavior, you have to reclaim your attention, because your attention is the most powerful resource you have, and right now, he's consuming almost all of it. You wake up thinking about him. You shower rehearsing conversations with him. You drive to work wondering what he's doing, who he's with, whether today's the day he reaches out. This is exhausting, and it's also the thing making you feel powerless. You don't feel powerless because he hasn't called. You feel powerless because your inner world has been handed over to someone who isn't even there. So here's what you do. Not a vague focus on yourself, instruction, but something you can actually implement tonight. Identify 3 times a day when you tend to spiral. Morning, mid-afternoon, and bedtime are most common, and create a replacement ritual for each. In the morning, instead of checking your phone, put on one song and make your bed before you do anything else. It sounds small. It's not. It retrains your brain too. Start the day with an action that belongs to you. In the afternoon, when the urge hits to check his socials, open a book for 5 minutes instead. Any book. Fiction is better. Your brain needs somewhere else to go, and giving it a story about other people short-circuits the story you're telling yourself about him. At night, the hardest one, write down 3 things that happened today that had nothing to do with him. A conversation, a song, a meal, anything. This teaches your brain that your life is still happening, even while you feel like it's paused. Within a week of doing this consistently, you'll notice something strange. He hasn't changed. Nothing external has changed. But the weight of him inside you starts to lighten. You're not trying to forget him. That never works. You're teaching your mind to make room for other things, and that room is where your life grows back. Now, there's a difference between going silent to punish him and going silent because you're busy becoming. The second one is the one that works. The first one is just another form of reaching. This is where the next piece comes in. You need to disappear without announcing it. What does that mean? It means you don't post a cryptic quote about walking away. You don't change your profile picture to something pointed. You don't tell mutual friends you're over him. You don't even block him dramatically. Because every dramatic move is a signal, and every signal is a way of saying, I still care what you see. True disappearance isn't a performance. It's a quiet withdrawal from the version of yourself that orbited around him. Practically, this looks like no check-ins disguised as casual questions. No liking an old photo to see if he notices. No texting a friend hoping she'll mention it to him. Every one of those actions is a thread connecting you back to him, and each thread has to be released. Not cut dramatically, just let go of. If you find yourself composing a message, open your notes app and write the whole thing there. Say everything you want to say. Let it out. Then close the app and go do something with your hands. Cook something, water a plant, walk around the block. The urge to send will pass within about 20 minutes if you don't feed it. And every time you don't send, you're not just practicing discipline. You're practicing becoming unreachable to the part of you that chases. That part gets quieter. Eventually, she finds something else to do. The paradox is that when you genuinely stop reaching, he starts to feel it. Not because he's psychic, but because the emotional frequency you carry changes. Your texts, if and when you do communicate, feel different, lighter, shorter, less invested. Your social presence feels different. You're posting from a life that's clearly in motion, not from a vigil waiting for him to notice. People pick up on this almost immediately. They don't always know they're picking it up. They just feel the shift and get curious. And curiosity, for humans, is one of the strongest pulls there is. Which brings us to something deeper, because disappearing isn't enough on its own. You have to come back to something. And that something is you. Somewhere along the way, you outsourced yourself to him. Your weekends got organized around his schedule. Your music became partly his music. Your food preferences bent toward his. Your friends saw less of you. Your hobbies got put on pause because they didn't fit into couple time. And now that he's gone or distant, you don't just miss him. You miss the version of you that had her own rhythm before he showed up. Rebuilding that version is the foundation everything else stands on. Start with one thing, not 10. 1. Pick something you used to love before this relationship, or something you always meant to try. Maybe it's painting, or Pilates, or a language you wanted to learn, or a cooking class, or hiking every Saturday morning with your sister. Commit to it 3 times a week for the next month. Put it in your calendar like it's a doctor's appointment. Treat it as non-negotiable, not because it's going to heal you overnight, but because consistency is the thing that actually rebuilds identity. You don't become a new version of yourself through insight. You become her through repetition. As you do this, something quietly powerful happens. Your sense of self stops being tied to whether he texts. You start having real stories to tell. Stories about your class, your friends, the chapter you finished, the hike you nailed. And when you have stories, you stop needing him to give your life meaning. You have meaning already, running through your days like a current. That current is what men feel when they walk back into your orbit. They don't know what it is. They just know you feel different. Full, not empty. Settled, not waiting. And they want back in. Now, even with everything you're doing internally, there will be moments when he reaches out. A text, a call, a comment. And how you handle those moments matters more than almost anything else. This is about letting silence do what words can't. Silence is the most underestimated form of communication we have. Not cold, punishing silence. Not the silent treatment. Measured, unrushed, confident silence. When he texts, you don't have to respond within 3 minutes to prove you still care. You don't have to respond within 3 days to prove you don't. You respond when it feels natural to you, from a place of groundedness, not strategy. If he sends a casual "hey," you don't send back a paragraph. You match his energy, or you leave it. If he asks for a conversation, you don't drop your entire evening. You tell him when you're free, on your terms, the most powerful version. Of this is the unanswered message that you genuinely didn't rush to answer. Not because you were gaming it, but because you were actually busy with your life, your class, your friends, your book, your hike. And when you do reply, your message carries that energy. The energy of someone whose day wasn't waiting on his words. He feels it immediately. A note here, because I don't want this to be misread. This isn't about playing hard to get. Hard to get is a performance, and people can tell. This is about actually being engaged with your own life so that your availability reflects reality. You're not pretending to be busy. You are busy. You're not performing distance. You've genuinely created it by becoming the center of your own world. The difference is everything. One is manipulation that collapses the moment he re-engages. The other is a new way of being that holds even when he comes back. Which brings us to the last piece, the energy. When you stop performing for his attention, something shifts in the atmosphere around you. It's hard to describe and impossible to fake. People who knew you before the shift will start asking what changed. Strangers will look at you a beat longer than they used to. And yes, he will feel it, even from a distance. Because what you've built isn't a strategy. It's a version of yourself that's no longer leaking energy towards someone who wasn't giving it back. All that energy is now yours. It sits in your posture. It sits in your voice. It sits in the way you walk into a room without scanning it for him. This is the energy that makes men reach out. Not because you tricked them, because they sense you're no longer accessible in the old way, and accessibility was what made you easy to take for granted. The woman who used to double text, triple explain, wait up, she's gone. In her place is someone whose time now has a cost, someone whose attention is clearly going somewhere, someone who crucially doesn't seem to be punishing anyone. She's just living. And people will chase that living more than they'll chase any carefully crafted message you've ever sent. Before you take any of this and run with it, I need to say one important thing. Because I've seen women misuse this principle, and I don't want you to be one of them. This is not a strategy to manipulate a specific man back into your life. It can't be. The moment you make it about him returning, you've rebuilt the cage you just escaped from. The whole point of becoming the center of your own life is that it has to be real. You have to actually want the life you're building, independent of whether he's in it. Because the hard truth is that some people won't come back. Some shouldn't. And some will come back, but not in the way you hoped, or not into the version of you that still exists by then. What you're really doing here isn't winning someone back. You're becoming a woman who doesn't need to win anyone. And that woman has options, not because she's collecting them, but because her life is the kind of life people want to be around. If he returns to someone stronger than the person he left. If he doesn't, you've built a life that would be worth living anyway. Either way, you win. And that's the only version of this that's healthy. One last note. If the dynamic you're dealing with involves disrespect, manipulation, or anything that's crossed into harm, this isn't about strategy. That's a situation that deserves real support. A trusted friend, a therapist, someone who can walk with you through it. Nothing in what I've shared is meant to apply to relationships where your safety or dignity are on the line. Please hear that clearly. The woman he can't stop thinking about isn't the one who tried harder. She's not the one who sent the perfect message, or showed up at the right party, or waited patiently by the phone. She's the one who, quietly and without fanfare, walked back into her own life and closed the door behind her. Not out of anger, out of self-respect. She stopped performing. She started becoming. And somewhere in that becoming, the entire dynamic between her and every man in her orbit changed. That woman is available to you right now. She's not a reward for enough pain or enough patience. She's a decision. You decide today that your life is the main story, not a subplot waiting for him to come back and animate. You decide that your mornings, your afternoons, your friendships, your work, your art, your rest, your joy are yours. You decide that the next time he reaches out, you'll respond from a life, not a longing. And if he never reaches out, you'll have the life anyway. That's the whole point. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Pick one thing from what I just walked you through. Just one. Maybe it's the morning ritual. Maybe it's the notes app practice. Maybe it's signing up for the class you've been thinking about for months. Don't try to do all 5 at once. You'll burn out by Wednesday. Pick the one that made something tighten in your chest when I said it. That tightness is your answer. Start there tomorrow. And then tomorrow, start again. If this reframed something for you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. What are you walking away from tonight? And what are you walking toward? Your answer might be the exact sentence someone else needs to read at 2 in the morning when they're about to send the message they shouldn't. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of honesty about relationships, self-worth, and the quiet work of becoming someone you're proud of. There's more coming on rebuilding after emotional disconnection, on reading someone's patterns before you fall for them, and on how to stop confusing intensity with love. I'll see you there. Until then, put the phone down. Go live your life. He'll notice. But more importantly, you will.